She was the kind of woman everyone trusted. Soft-spoken, polite, always smiling. To her neighbors, she was the picture of kindness, but behind that smile was pure evil. This is the story of how one underestimated underdog, pushed to the brink, turned the tables on a powerful figure who thought he was untouchable, and how justice came in the most unexpected way. It all began in a quiet town in Missouri. Emily Carter, just 24 years old. She worked long hours as a waitress in a roadside diner, barely scraping enough to pay rent. But she dreamed of something better, a life where she wouldn't always be invisible. Her boss, Richard Hale, made sure she stayed that way. Richard was a man with money, power, and influence. He owned half the businesses in town, and he enjoyed reminding people that he controlled their lives. To Emily, Richard was more than just a boss. He was her tormentor, belittling her in front of customers, docking her pay for mistakes she never made, and always smiling as he did it. That smug, practiced smile that said, "I own you." The town whispered about him, of course, but nobody dared stand up to Richard, because those who did lost everything. Emily kept her head down. She needed the job, but behind her quiet eyes, a storm was building. One night, Richard stayed late at the diner. He ordered Emily to clean while he sat in the back office counting cash. As she scrubbed the floor, she overheard something that made her freeze. Richard was on the phone, his voice low, urgent, talking about moving money, about getting rid of someone. Emily held her breath. This wasn't just workplace cruelty. This was something darker. She thought about walking away, pretending she hadn't heard, but curiosity and survival kept her rooted. She needed this job, but more importantly, she needed to know what Richard was hiding. The next morning, she made a choice. She started watching, listening. At first, it was little things, receipts that didn't add up, strange men showing up after hours. Then, she found the ledger, tucked away in the supply closet. Page after page of numbers, payments, names, and one word written over and over: debt. Richard wasn't just a businessman. He was running an entire blackmail operation. He owned people, politicians, cops, business owners, by keeping records of their secrets, secrets that could destroy lives. Emily couldn't believe it. The man who humiliated her every day was hiding crimes that could topple the whole town. But here's the twist. Richard found out she knew. One night, as she was leaving the diner, he stopped her, his smile wider than ever. "You're a smart girl, Emily," he said. "Smarter than I gave you credit for. But curiosity is dangerous, and I'd hate for someone like you to disappear." Her blood turned cold. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. Emily realized she was trapped. Nobody would believe her. Richard owned the police, the courts, the businesses. If she spoke up, she'd be ruined. If she stayed silent, she'd be next. So she played the part. The obedient waitress, the quiet girl who never talked back, smiling at Richard the way he smiled at her. But behind that smile, Emily was planning. For weeks, she gathered everything. She copied the ledger, hid it where Richard would never find it. She recorded his late-night phone calls, every name, every threat. And then, she waited for her moment. It came in the most unexpected way. The town was hosting its annual charity gala, a glittering event attended by everyone who mattered. And of course, Richard Hale was front and center, shaking hands, smiling for cameras, acting like the generous man everyone admired. Emily was there too, not as a guest, but as a server, invisible as always, until the lights dimmed and the projector flickered on. At first, the screen showed a slideshow of donations, laughter, applause, then static, and then Richard's voice. The recordings Emily had made, his threats, his deals, his confessions, every dirty secret broadcast to the entire room. The crowd went silent, then gasps, murmurs. Faces turned toward Richard, who sat frozen, his smile gone. On the screen, the ledger appeared, page after page of names, politicians, police chiefs, judges, all of them tied to Richard. And standing in the back, tray in hand, Emily finally smiled. Not the polite smile Richard had mocked, but a smile of victory. The room erupted in chaos. Some tried to leave, others demanded answers. And for the first time in his life, Richard Hale looked powerless. By morning, the story was everywhere. Headlines, news broadcasts, investigations launched. The empire Richard had built on lies and fear crumbled in a single night. And Emily, the invisible waitress nobody respected, had brought down the most powerful man in town. Justice, it seemed, had finally been served. But the story doesn't end there. Because a week later, Emily received a letter. No return address, no name, just one sentence. "You don't know what you've started." Inside was a photo. Not of Richard, but of someone else. A man Emily didn't recognize. Smiling that same familiar smile. And in that moment, she realized Richard wasn't the top of the chain. He was just the beginning. The real power, the real evil, was still out there, and it was watching her. Emily Carter thought it was over. She had exposed Richard Hale. The powerful man who tormented her was finally behind bars. The town, for once, seemed free from his grip. But justice is rarely that simple, because Richard wasn't the mastermind. He was just a puppet. And the real puppeteer was still out there. The letter arrived 1 week after Richard's arrest. No return address, no name, just that haunting sentence, "You don't know what you've started." And the photo. A man Emily didn't recognize, dressed in an expensive suit, looking straight into the camera with a smile that was far too familiar. The same smile Richard wore when he thought he owned the world. Emily's chest tightened. If Richard was just a pawn, then who was this man? The answer came quicker than she expected. One evening, as she walked home from the diner, she noticed a black SUV parked across the street. The same car appeared the next morning, and the next. Never moving, never leaving. Someone was watching her. Emily tried to ignore it, tried to convince herself she was imagining things. But then, her apartment door was left unlocked. Her papers, Richard's copied ledger, had been touched, moved, and taped to her bathroom mirror was another note. "Stay quiet, or disappear like the rest." Her stomach dropped. The rest? How many others had Richard silenced? Emily was terrified. But she wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not after everything she had risked. So she made a choice. If someone was watching her, she would start watching them. That night, she followed the SUV. It drove across town, stopping at a large mansion on the edge of the city. The kind of place you only saw in magazines. Armed guards at the gate, cameras on every corner, and stepping out of the car was the man from the photo. Tall, charismatic, sharp suit. Everyone who saw him would call him successful, respectable. But Emily could feel it. This was the true face of the operation. The real power behind Richard Hale. His name, she would soon learn, was Marcus Vance. And unlike Richard, Marcus wasn't sloppy. He didn't just control businesses. He controlled entire districts, judges, police commissioners, even senators. Richard had been dangerous, but Marcus Vance, he was untouchable. Emily knew she was in over her head. But fate wasn't done with her yet. The very next day, she was approached by a man at the diner. Mid-40s, nervous. He slid into her booth, eyes darting around. "You don't know me," he whispered, "but I know what you did to Richard. And I know Marcus won't stop until you're gone." Unless we worked together. His name was Daniel Cross, a former accountant for Marcus Vance, and what he carried with him was explosive. Flash drives, documents, hidden recordings, evidence Marcus had spent years burying. Richard was small time, Daniel said. Marcus runs everything: drugs, trafficking, money laundering. He's been untouchable for decades, but with your courage and my evidence, we can bring him down. Emily's pulse raced. For the first time, she wasn't alone. She had an ally. Together, they began piecing it all together. Late nights, secret meetings, every detail carefully recorded, every connection mapped out. And as they dug deeper, Emily realized something horrifying. Richard Hale hadn't chosen her at random. Her torment, her humiliation, her suffering. It was part of a test. And Emily? She had just proven she was a threat. The noose was tightening. One night, Emily returned to her apartment to find Daniel's things gone. His phone disconnected. His car abandoned 2 blocks away. Daniel had vanished. On her kitchen table, she found a small envelope. Inside was a USB drive and a note written in Daniel's handwriting. "If you're reading this, they found me. Don't stop. Finish what we started." Emily's hands shook as she plugged in the drive. On the screen appeared files, dozens of them, bank transfers, photos, names, a network so wide it reached far beyond her small town. And at the center of it all, Marcus Vance, smiling in every photo. Emily's fear turned into fire. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every victim, every person destroyed by this empire of corruption. But as she stared at the screen, one file caught her eye. A name, one she recognized instantly, her own. Next to it, a date, just 2 days away. Her breath caught. It wasn't just a file, it was a kill order. Emily Carter had only 48 hours left. And as the clock ticked down, she realized something chilling. Exposing Marcus Vance wouldn't be enough, because to stop him, she'd have to become something she never thought she could be, someone capable of fighting evil, with evil. But could Emily cross that line? And if she did, would she survive it? The answer comes in part 2. Follow to get to know what happens to Emily.